This is episode 6, Art as a Reflection of the Soul. My guest today is digital media artist Mathias Manser. His one-of-a-kind hand-drawn digital art bursts with energy using a visionary combination of light, color, and geometry. We explore how some of his most intense emotions were poured into his artwork during a prolonged dark night of the soul. Rather than use his art as an escape, Mathias prefers to channel his feelings directly into his work, resulting in powerful, visceral art that demands to be felt. Please enjoy this wide-ranging interview with my friend, Mathias Manser. This is the Language of Creativity podcast. I wanted to open up every podcast with work from each artist.
Okay, sounds good.
And so I figure, since you're a graphic artist, the only way to do that is to kind of describe what I see. So this is one of Mathias's original artworks. It's called Ring of Fire. And
very intense piece.
It's a very intense piece. I see what looks like a sun, and there's this brilliant yellow in the middle, and radiating out from it is bands of orange, large red, kind of going out into the blackness of purple. And then in front of the sun is this, almost looks like a yin-yang.
Yeah.
It has like these, looks like...
Sounds like two like fish or something, too.
Yeah, two creatures that are chasing each other in a circle with energy in the middle.
That's pretty nicely described there, my man.
Oh, thank you. And then the motion around the circle is moving in this opposite direction from the center.
Yes.
And then radiating outward from that piece is these almost would look like black bands of sun rays, if I can describe it any other way, with sort of like faces in the middle.
There's a lot going on. A lot of stuff going on in there. That's for sure. There's a lot of energy in it. Like, as I think with most of my artwork, it's more like an energetic thing rather than anything else, I think.
That's what really, struck me when I first saw your artwork, was the feeling that you get when you first encounter it is pure energy.
Yeah, I would agree.
I remember you were showing me a couple proofs, and I was bowled over by one or two. Like, you're like, oh, here's the next one. And I'm like, wait, hold on, I need a minute.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah.
You were a little overwhelmed with it at first. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that's funny. And I had another friend, too, that looked at the cards, and she's very intuitive, too, and she had the same kind of a reaction to some of those cards. She was like, whoa, especially when they were backwards, like when they're in the reverse.
Uh-huh.
So, like, it really came out as in the reverse meaning of it, So,
wow,
yeah,
that's really cool.
Pretty crazy.
My guest today is Mathias Manser, artist and, actually multimedia artist. He's also a musician, graphic artist, and awesome thinker, philosopher king.
Thank you. I'm trying. I'm learning every day.
Welcome to the Language of Creativity podcast.
Thank you.
It's really a pleasure to have you on.
Pleasure is all mine, yeah.
Well, one of the things that I really wanted to do on this podcast was sort of like pull back the curtain on the artist's life.
Yeah.
And, there are a few people in my life that I know who I would put squarely in the category of artist. And Mathias, you are one of them.
Thank you.
So.
Wow. That's an honor. Thanks. I appreciate that.
So originally when you were designing these art pieces that you did, they weren't designed for the medium they ended up in. So tell me about the process and how you started with these, 52 different art pieces?
Well, it's 46 in this deck. I created more art than that. I just chose 46 of, I don't know, I had a couple more, but most of them just didn't make it. Most of them, it was probably maybe 2 or 3 more at the time. It was just, it started around, I think at the end of 2011, 2012, around there. Like it was that whole thing with the Mayan calendar, you know?
Yes, the world's going to end.
Yeah, exactly. But
The
it didn't,
shift is
right?
coming.
It didn't. And so that's good, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So, I was at this conference and I met some really interesting people. And I think that's when my spiritual journey really started. Was around that time. It was called Awake and Aware. It was like this conference, and shortly after that, I felt, I had this kind of like some kind of like a medium. Like I had this phone call, and they kind of suggested for me to do something in that area, but it turned out completely different in the end. But
you mean suggested that? So this is a psychic.
Yeah,
that you were talking to,
output.
And they suggested that you start to draw or paint.
Yeah, exactly, something like that.
That's amazing.
And so I went ahead and got myself some equipment as this tablet that I use, which is it's not an inexpensive thing, but it got a lot of miles on it, so it's all good.
Like a Wacom drawing table.
The Wacom one, exactly, the Cintiq. And so I just started to get used to just drawing on that tablet rather than on a piece of paper or something like that, because I come more from like pencil drawings. That was really like a strength of mine. So I'm not really good with like necessarily like a real brush, but I use the medium of oil on the digital media, which is or the medium, which is then kind of like it translates into that, but I hold it like a pencil, which is more comfortable for me. So it's really a neat thing, and it allows me to create multiple layers and really like work from foreground to background or vice versa, because usually when you do a painting, you can only like put stuff on top, and you can't really like change the background after. So I had different approaches over it was almost like 5 years of like creating all these pieces. Yeah,
that's really cool. So in other words, you're working with a digital medium allows you to mix styles on your canvases.
Yeah,
that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
so you're getting something that in physicality would not be possible.
Yeah, exactly. So like in a way, I'm kind of challenged sometimes when it comes down to technology, but in this way it just really opened up new roads for me to travel, so to say. And it was really interesting. I got really in touch with a lot of indigenous kind of ways of painting and drawing. And supposedly I was an indigenous person. That came all out from that.
Well, it's
meeting,
very clear in your artwork. Most people that look at the bulk of your work would see a lot of tribal influences in it. Yeah.
And I coined the phrase digital tribal expressionism. That's what I call this.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. And so I kind of just wanted to create art. And at first I printed it on wood. And it was very costly, and
they were large. They were
large pieces,
8 feet by 4 feet, and
some of them were really big. Yeah,
yeah.
But they needed to be big for me. I don't know. I just wanted to like leave an impression, and and it just didn't really like go off the way I wanted it to. Like maybe I was a little bit too I don't know, hopeful that someone would pick me up or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the artist's dream, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I did the art. I'm here.
Exactly, I'm here.
The star has arrived.
No one sees me. What the hell? So yeah, it was a little bit like that, and a lot of trial and error. And but it got me to where I'm now. So it's like I think the cards came out really nicely, and I'm really happy with it. So.
Well, so like I remember, Mathias and I know each other from the coffee shop that we in the town that he works and I live, and we just kind of
haven.
Yeah, it's like this little community. It's kind of off-brand coffee shop, and it's this community of people that sort of like-minded. And I met a lot of artists there. And one of the things that was interesting was kind of seeing your journey, where you would show me the pieces, as full-on wood pieces, and I saw them like in photographs. And
Yes.
then one day you came to me and you're like, Steve, I have some proofs. Check this out.
Yeah.
I realized that it's an oracle deck.
Yes, and it's just crazy how that came about. I mean, like, you know, I'm a sucker for, you know, like readings online. I check it out. I just get enjoyment out of that, and I was pretty versed with the regular tarot, you know, and some oracle decks, and yeah, that was always like a hobby of mine in a way. And someone not suggested it, but like it came to me when I was watching someone doing like she had someone else's art as tarot or oracle cards on her channel, and it really inspired me. I was like, wow, I can do that with my art. And so that's really how it came about. And the fun thing was, it was already all done. So I didn't try to, you know, basically create a deck. It just came about naturally, and that was really the fun part, you know?
Yeah, and I was like, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this is a deck. And you showed me the proofs, and I'm sitting here looking at them going, you know, just being completely bowled over by the artwork itself. It's just like, you know, it just felt like it was coming off the page, and just one after another, just kind of relentless, almost gut-wrenching experiences. And I could tell that you had really put a large amount of your soul and life experience into each and every work.
I would say so, yeah.
Tell me about a few of them. Like, tell me a little bit about your story in the last, you know, let's say you said 2011, so it's 2018 as of this recording.
Yes.
And so that's about 7 years. Tell me about your life journey through making those pieces.
Yeah. Well, the drawing or the art itself started really in the beginning of 2013. And yeah, I was going through a lot of stuff. I mean, first I just tried to be an artist, and I had experiences of all kinds, and like I really worked through almost all the archetypes that were necessary for a deck, and so that's why it turned into a deck eventually. But you know, I had a lot of things happening to me. There was at the end of 2014, my mom died. And that would be like the death card. I would say it's the dragon tail, you know. That one is you know, I was basically drawing it as she was on a deathbed, and
wow.
And so like all that like came into my artwork, and I never drew on like you know, being high or being like you know, like under any kind of influence of anything. And so I just worked through my you know, the experiences through my art. Like it just came all out, and I just so I just kind of channeled all those things into those cards really naturally. So
well, and then I remember you and I having a lot of philosophical conversations.
Yes.
And you're a big you've studied a lot of things, but you've studied Jung.
Yeah.
Carl Jung.
Yeah, well, a study. I mean, like I read some stuff.
You've read some stuff, but you've read some serious stuff. Like you gave me a copy of the Red Book, which was the book that Jung secretly wrote and never published until after till recently, like very recently. His family finally let it out because it was like people were going to think he was crazy. Yeah, it was basically him going deep into his subconscious and having vivid daydreams about his inner life. And he, as a scientist, went back and looked at all these experiences that he had subjectively and basically formulated his theories on the psyche using his own travels. And some people think he used psychedelics. Some people aren't sure. You know, a lot of the historians say that he, you know, supposedly didn't. And I could imagine that, you know, maybe he just had a process that was so deep that, you know, one of the things he said was that it's such a fine line with his patients of slipping into psychosis versus this process. It's like psychosis is when you don't come back from this process. And
that can happen. That could happen. I can definitely see that. You know,
and so one of the reasons I bring that up is because I'm sure there's a lot of people who are either unfamiliar with the tarot or sort of spooked out by it.
Yeah.
One of the things you and I have talked about a lot is this idea of archetypes.
Yes.
And this idea of life is, the song Life is But a Dream. There's sort of this aspect of, even if you study serious psychology, of how we mirror our world that's from inside outside, just by, even if you wanted to get neuroscientific about it, even just by the filters we use within to take the outside world in and how we interpret it.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
And so we find various archetypes across cultures and across, if you read the work of Joseph Campbell, Power of Myth, you find these archetypes that are universal across all cultures.
Yes.
And
the hero with the hero with a thousand faces?
Yes.
The
hero's journey. And And so part of what I think about your cards is that, having lived through these various experiences of intense things that happen in human life, that you're able to connect to something that is universal.
Yeah, I definitely tapped into some kind of thing, like some kind of, call it resource, or I think I just tapped into like the deepest depths of my subconscious, really, so that's kind of just like a reflection of that.
And Jung was a believer in the collective unconscious, so he kind of had this theory that not just your unconscious, but the world human unconscious sort of is somehow linked in some quantum cosmic way.
Yeah, we're all linked in some way.
That
sure.
defies, current scientific explanation, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, we're like, we're doing baby steps at this point, like scientifically speaking, I would say, probably in this field still,
Well, yeah, and what was that quote I was reading in psychology of, basically, it's one of the hardest things to study because, like Jung, he had to go into his own subconscious to study the subconscious, and then you can't be objective because all of a sudden you're in the middle of it and you're having this experience. And the same thing, if I were to be your shrink and you were to tell me something, I could only observe your behaviors. I couldn't, you can't take it apart.
True,
you can't.
true.
I can only hear your interpretation of what you're going through.
It's always a very personal thing. Yeah.
And I feel, in a way, I feel like that's true with art as well. And that's maybe one of the powers of art, is the ability to bring your subjective experience out, to put it in a medium that surpasses the words.
Yes.
And then,
because we're maybe not good with words.
Share that with me, and I can have my own experience of that and maybe get a glimpse of what you felt, but also have my own version of what you're experiencing when I'm looking at this beautiful piece of artwork.
Thank you.
It's true, though, because everybody's experience is unique, but on some level, you're communicating something that, even if I don't know what to call it, then everyone's going to have a part of that story, at least maybe in pure feeling. Yeah. And that's what I love about your art, is it's emotive.
Yeah.
It's raw, it's deep, it's powerful.
Yeah, I put a lot in that. It's like, there's a lot of soul in there, that's for sure. I mean...
So tell me about when you were drawing. I know I've asked you a few of these ones. I didn't know if you had a story for this one, but when you were drawing this artwork called Ring of Fire, which you titled Ring of Fire, what were you experiencing at that time in your life?
That's a good question, because I don't remember exactly when I drew this one in particular. There's some that I really remember, like the one obviously when my mom died, or like I had this one with the bees. Like it's almost like the lover's card, I would say, which is a very positive. It's like the complete opposite to the death card in a way.
Yeah, it's called Feeding on the Lotus. It has two little bees on like a lotus flower, and all the colors are very spring, and it's.
And when I drew that one, I had a really good time, and I was in Hawaii, and I was really relaxed, and I was in nature, and it was just like, so it always reflects that. So like with this one in particular, I also had the, believe it or not, was the samsara card, the devil card, as in Hawaii as well. And there was I was working through some things there, like with addiction, and which I think it is linked, especially the samsara card, which is kind of like the devil card in the regular tarot, for people that are familiar with that.
Right. What's interesting about that artwork is that it's got this mask in the middle, and the mask is grinning, but it's like this very ominous looking card.
Yes.
And unlike some of your cards, which seem to like pop out, this one has a lot more of like a flatness to it. And I always thought of it like the mask that you wear to hide yourself, because you're afraid of showing the world who you are.
Yeah, there's definitely something to that. Yeah. We all wear a mask for sure. Yeah, I'm pretty. As you know me, I'm pretty open. Like I share a lot of of my true being. I guess I learned a lot on the spiritual journey, how to like be open, and I also learned how to kind of like curb it a little bit at times.
Tone it down for general audiences.
Yeah. Because I'm very outspoken for the most part, and it did get me into trouble at times, and. Yeah,
let's talk about that a little, just kind of on the periphery of it.
Sure.
I feel like it's a common thread for almost any artist to feel misunderstood.
Yeah.
And to sort of push the fringe of what is going on. Like I think of 80s music and the whole new wave music scene where, all the guys were, it's like you didn't know George Michael was gay, and then you found, oh my God, George Michael's gay? And everybody's like, yeah, of course he is, But that was pushing an envelope at that time and that culture, and it was like this subculture, this scene, but like it wasn't known to like the pop audience who was ready to listen to his art, who loved everything about him, but couldn't accept him at face value. A lot of people who probably listened at the time because of the times.
It's kind of funny, like the 80s, I mean, it was such like a gay time in a way. I mean, it's kind of funny, like the whole word now, it means something completely different than I actually, a long time ago, Exactly.
It's completely changed.
So it's kind of funny in that way.
But now, I mean, look at how far we've come, almost 25 years later, where there's this very...
Is it already 25?
I know, right? Crazy. Making us all feel old.
Yeah.
Yes, I lived through the 80s.
Me too, yeah.
And that's the thing, though, right? I know there's a long way to go, but in terms of like public understanding, at least trying to accept that issue, is a lot further along. And I feel like the art of the time had a big role to play in shifting the culture.
Yeah.
And to helping people to accept and maybe even acclimate to the cultural changes that were coming. I mean, it's certainly true of 60s music, right?
Yeah, I mean, like every era. I was very influenced by the 90s, probably the most. I mean, the 80s, I was a teenager in the 80s, so, I was completely in that. And I remember a lot of friends of mine that completely just they were just stuck there and never like gotten into the 90s stuff. And I love the 90s, things like Alice in Chains, and it was cool. It was and I always kind of.
So what you're saying is you love the Mary Jane.
Mary Jane? What's the Mary Jane?
Oh, that's right. I forget. So Matthias is from Switzerland.
Yeah.
And so there's certain cultural idioms that are lost in him. Mary Jane is weed.
Ah,
so like,
yeah. That's always welcome. Yeah, of course. I mean, I had some time off, and I needed some time off. It's just, for me, weed helps me to kind of be more objective. Like when I create, I never really smoke, which is interesting. Like a lot of artists need almost like the weed to be creative, or like some kind of substance. And I didn't have that. I mean, like I could probably create with it, but I don't know. For the drawing, I want to be together. I want to. I don't know.
You want to feel it all.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know what it is, but I just feel I'm more focused, I get very unfocused when I smoke. So it's kind of like it's a fun thing, and it's fun to relax with it at some point. And it helps me to actually know if a work is actually finished, which is funny. Right,
because you can detach yourself from the work enough to just experience it.
Yeah.
Third party.
It helps me to, because it just heightens your senses, right? So it's kind of like everything gets amplified. So if something looks really good, you just really know that it's good. And
you feel it. Yeah.
So I feel when I work, when I look at it, and I'm under the influence, let's say, of weed or something like that, I just really know right away that, wow, this is done now,
Yeah. Well, that's important. I mean, I think one of the things that, I personally don't smoke, but I don't judge people who do.
Thank you.
Because most of the people that I've known who use it occasionally are very, very brilliant people.
Thanks.
And so what happens is I feel
take
like
that as a compliment.
I feel like sometimes you have to calm down the mind because it's running in too many different directions.
Yeah.
And I know I certainly fall into that trap, and people have told me, hey, Steve, you need to take a chill pill.
Yeah.
And I've sort of, for the last 15 years, been on that journey of myself of learning how to do that through meditation, through breathing, through engaging my body and exercise and things like that. And I've got a long way to go, but oh my God, I was so high strung in high school,
Well, but we all come from that. I mean, like I actually had the pleasure of, my mom being into that, and she actually took me as a kid to meditation classes and yoga and all that. So
I thought you were going to say your mom gave you weed.
Yeah, she gave me weed early on. So
sorry, so not to get you off track, but yeah, so your mom was into meditation.
Yeah, she was into that. Well, I wouldn't say like they were like the most spiritually, awake people. My parents. I mean, like I think my mom more so. Maybe my dad he was a musician. And so that's where the music came in. And my mom, she was just very, she was very shell-shocked from the war, first of all. And she just kind of...
World War II.
World War II. And she just, I think she wanted to just kind of like find an escape to not deal with it. And I think that's why she looked into like all the new agey kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
And...
So you grew up in Switzerland.
Yes.
And your parents... were affected directly they were alive during World War II.
Yes.
And what was that like in Switzerland at the time?
Well, she was not in Switzerland. She was actually in Germany at the time. So
wow.
So she was kind of like getting a lot of like downloads right there, So my dad, he was in Switzerland. He had his dad.
So you mean direct somatic trauma?
Yeah, it was. I also dealt with some of those things later, because like I was taking it on subconsciously, because yeah, it's like she never really talked about it, and so it's kind of like it's that underlying energy that you just take on from your mom because it was not talked about, and I had to actually work through that, which was really interesting. Yeah.
So, yeah, because I don't think of you as very old. Your parents must have had you a little bit later in life.
Yeah, my dad was 40 when they had me.
Okay,
so, yeah.
That makes more sense. So because to me it's almost like your grandparents would have survived World War II. But, in this case, your mom and dad,
yes,
they met. Did they meet after the war?
Yeah. That was way after, of course. Yeah.
And,
Well, not of course, but it was way after, yeah.
And your dad was a musician. What did he play?
Yes. What did he play, or where did he play?
What did he play?
He played a lot of instruments. I mean, I remember having to like carry his drum set into and put it in his car, or like he was a guitarist too. He played upright bass. He played the harmonica later on in life for the most part. He was kind of like an entertainer. I wouldn't say he was like amazing on each one of those instruments, but he was like a multi-instrumentalist, and I kind of got that too, like where I was a little bit more specific, as in, guitar was really my thing for the longest time, and yeah,
right. And you went to Musicians Institute.
Yeah,
did you?
I did that. Yeah,
yeah, that's also where
but not for guitar. I went there actually for singing. It's kind of funny. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
So I was in the choir there too. Like I did the Schroeder classes with the jazz stuff and all that, like the scatting and everything. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know you are a phenomenal guitar player,
Thanks.
So I would have assumed you went for guitar.
No.
But Musicians Institute is one of those schools where like they get really technical in the music.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like jazz fusion, prog.
Yeah,
like complicated stuff going on there.
For the singers, it was kind of like it was a little bit watered down. Let's just say that
really?
way. It was not as it's not Berkeley or anything like that. It's
True.
not as heady.
Yeah.
It was more about performance, which is actually it was really beneficial to me because I needed to be more, I think, confident in front of people. I think as a performer. And so that was really, it was actually interesting too. When I came here, I wasn't a songwriter or anything like that, and they really encouraged me to do my own music. And I remember I got my first guitar here. It was a Gibson acoustic. It was like the best sounding guitar, and I didn't have enough money, so I had to get it without the case and everything. I had to be super careful. But yeah, it's just like I didn't play for probably a year or 2 years. I didn't play guitar at all. I kind of gave it a break, and I just wanted to sing. And when I came here, yeah, I started to actually write songs, and you know, I did this whole CD too. You know, like I built my own studio in the back of the garage, and like I'm all self-taught with everything. I just like, you know, I just build stuff or do stuff, and it's just I go for it. And yeah, it's crazy sometimes. It's just jump into it and see where it goes. You know.
Lately, you've been playing drums, right?
Yes, that's a big love of mine right now. It's like, it just, it's almost like a meditation for me now, because like I've been doing meditation, I've been doing yoga, I've been studying hermetics. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. That's just really like, it's the study of the real magic with the 4 elements and all that. I never gotten really too far into that, but I really gotten into like focus exercises and all that, and it's just, drums help me to actually calm my mind and to really like, almost like I feel almost like I'm getting messages through it. Like when I play, when I really get into it, when I'm really in the groove, and I'm just not, I'm not playing heady anymore. I'm playing from the heart. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like it opens me up to something different. It's the same thing with the art. Like I get lost in it, you know, and it's a beautiful thing. So yeah.
Very beautiful thing. And to kind of geek out on the neuroscience of it for a second, supposedly when they do studies of brains and what part of brains light up when you do different things, like walking and automatic exercises that you can choose to have control of or choose to forget over, like driving, are the back part of your brain. And that's an older...
Is that the cerebellum? Is that what it is?
I think so.
Right?
Yeah, it was like the one part that beats your heart, but there's also like breathing. You can control it, or you can like let it go automatically.
Yeah, you shouldn't control it or you're in trouble.
And
once you learned it. You know?
Yeah, and swallowing is another one of those things. It's automatic unless you think about it. And what happens is there's newer parts of your brain that, you know, at least in the theory of evolution, there's this idea that there are parts of your brain that evolve later because they're not as developed in monkeys, they're more developed in chimpanzees. And the most recent part of the brain is the forebrain, it's the front. Yeah. It's the part that does...
The higher aspect. So
like, it's the part of you that like makes like rational decisions, like quote unquote. It's the part of you that holds certain things in your attention and can think into the future and can like do math and that kind of stuff.
Okay. Because I would almost see that as the third eye, but you're not talking about that right now, are you?
No.
That's just the frontal part, right?
That's just like the part of you that gets really sore when you're thinking too much and you're just like,
Oh, okay.
That can
happen.
It's a relatively newer part of the brain, so you can kind of freak it out. Like if you ever go to a timeshare presentation, they're trying to wear out all your objections and just answer every possible question with something that seems logical. They're trying to wear out that newer part of your brain that's not as experienced. And so when you're doing things that are automatic, subconscious, older, more instinctual, you're accessing a more ancient system. You know, almost a more tribal. I mean, it's
almost like past memories or something like that.
Yeah, like people associate drums with kind of tribalism because tribes play drums, and those exercises really, they find that people who drum together can link up heartbeats.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and there's a very instinctual thing that comes with that. And having worked with a lot of good drummers, good drummer is somebody who's played enough to let all that stuff be automatic. It's like the moment you're thinking about, I'm going to do this new thing.
That's when it fails. Yeah,
that's when you fall on your face.
Yeah. It's because it's almost like that part when you try to show off. And it happened to me too. Like I was at this drum circle, and I just tried to be like really, check me out, like what I can do, and of course it all failed and it all crashed and burned. But when you just allow yourself to just to really feel into it, that's when the magic happens, you know.
And there's this other element too for me of like getting in tune with your body. And I feel like drummers have that down more than anything because it's the most athletic, next to singing. It's the most athletic music form. of performing.
Okay, yeah.
And so if you watch drummers on stage, they sweat buckets because they're just moving every limb. And
there's also like the ones that, when you really like just play out of your wrists, you actually don't use that much energy at all. It's kind of funny.
Jazz
it's
hands.
more like it's more like the rock drummers from the 80s that like need to like do a lot more to emphasize what they're doing, and nothing wrong with that,
Well, and that was the coolest thing, was listening to John Bonham. If you ever get on the internet and search his outtakes, where they've just isolated his drum tracks, and he's playing these grooves that are epic, like iconic sounds, and he's playing, this like really slow thing, and it's really groovy, and the pocket's really, and you just hear go, because it's like he's got Tourette's, it's like that part of your brain that you can't control if you have Tourette's. It's just like he's just sitting there playing, his limbs are moving, he's grooving, and he's just like,
it just comes out. Nice. Yeah. I like that. That's awesome. That's when it gets really authentic, I guess, when you forget about yourself almost, like it's just flow, right?
Yeah, and Gestalt.
Yeah.
That idea of like,
which is a German word, right? Which means something different here, which is funny.
Well, because Gestalt is like that idea of Gestalt therapy is like the song Shout, Shout, Let It All Out.
Oh, I remember that. Tears for Fears,
yeah,
right?
That's the idea behind Gestalt therapy. And I think that's true in artists. Like when you come to your art completely sober and you're like, I'm going to feel this pain.
Yeah.
I'm going to fucking feel the death
right
now.
I've been
and
there.
I'm going to draw it. Yes. And I'm not going to run away from it.
Yeah.
That's why I think the artist life takes courage.
Yeah.
Because not very many people would willingly like run into the combat.
No,
run into the
you
fray.
see me run into it multiple times. Yeah.
Yes, we've been friends for a couple of years now.
Yes. But I can't help it. It's just like I wanna experience this. Like I don't want to be like dead inside, And I think if you never let yourself feel things and you've never really go and risk things, then you just don't live. That's the thing. It's just like, and it hurts at times. Yeah, you've seen me going up and down like crazy. Like I've been in low places. Yeah, I hit rock bottom. I hit probably below rock bottom at times. And
just when you thought the bottom was the rocks, then there was a lower bottom.
Yes, there's always a lower bottom.
I hope not.
But it's just. But the good thing about that is like it can only go up after that, and it's also when you visit that place, almost like, I wouldn't say frequently, but if you kind of like let yourself. If you allow yourself to feel that, you also come right back. It's like that doll that you push over and it comes right back up, right?
Right.
It's kind of like that. After a while, it doesn't take you as long to get over a heartbreak or something like that,
I've noticed that. I mean, it's one of the things I really admire about you as a friend was watching you go through things and kind of be like, no, I don't need you to feel bad for me. I'm just going through it. And then like... watching you bounce back in like a day or two and like seriously be fine. And I'm just like, damn.
Because I worked through it. I mean, like I just bawled my eyes out. I was just like curled up on the ground the whole night, kind of like that.
Yeah, Gestalt.
But it's like you work through something. You really like sometimes, I don't know, it's just like, it's almost like a shamanic thing in a way too, like where they actually let all that stuff out. It's kind of, you don't have to, I mean, it helps to kind of just clear out all that gunk that's in you that keeps you from actually flourishing. And, like looking back at my parents, and I was instilled so many limited beliefs that I'm still working through at this point. My mom would always say that you can't do that, you just don't do that, and like that's all I heard my whole life. It's like, and I was like, no, I can, and I was going for it anyway, and it's kind of It's been rough at times, and especially when you choose like an artistic route, or I always wanted to do something artistic, and my mom just wanted me to have a good day job, So I was being a draftsman for a while in Switzerland, and I went through the whole thing and a lot of math and all that, and in hindsight it was actually kind of good for my art, because there is a lot of I don't know if it calls it fractals or whatever, like
fractals,
all that
motion,
kind of, apparent
motion, perspective.
Yeah, all that comes into
Yeah.
it, you know. So it wasn't like not a lost cause, you know, that I went through that. I learned, you know, like I remember like in my apprenticeship, you know, we do mostly apprenticeships over there. I didn't go to college or anything. Like apprenticeship lasts 4 years, and you would literally, we would draw with pencil and then with ink, and the corners would be rounded when you would connect them, or like if you would draw like a square, right, by hand, you would have to go back. You would have to draw over, and then go with a scalpel and make it sharp, the edges.
Oh, wow.
So I had to go through stuff like that. It was like, you know, like, it's almost like I felt like, you know, being a little watchmaker like over there, you know, which is kind of funny, you know, like Switzerland and all that. I always tell that, you know, like when they say, oh, what you do over there, you know, like we'll make watches and we milk cows and then we yodel, you know, it's kind of like that, you know, which is of course not true, but. And I'm from an industrial part of Switzerland, so it's not as scenic where I'm from. I mean, if you would see,
stacks.
yeah, I'm not from like let's say a nice area, and yeah, I didn't really get the Sound of Music kind of experience, you know, that most think I did.
Uh-huh.
But you know, I'm grateful for that because I had to fight for a lot of things, you know, so. And I'm back to that now because, like, yeah, you know, I was married into money, and that was a nice ride too, and there was a lot of privileges I enjoyed, but it's you know, it's also like it's interesting to go back to that and lose all that, you know. So that has been also like a very big teaching moment, you know, for me. So really interesting life experiences, like, you know, crossing the pond, you know, like just going for it. I didn't know anyone here, so I had a bag full of clothes and you know, some money for the school, and that was that, you know. So
MI is what brought you out here.
Yes,
Musicians Institute.
Yes.
So you moved to Hollywood.
Yes, I stayed
everything you dreamed of.
Yeah, I stayed in a hostel on Hollywood.
There you go. Yeah,
and
I was going to say Hollywood's not nice.
And you know what? I didn't mind it. Even the roaches didn't really bother me as much. I had a dream, you know, and for me it was just like, it was so freeing, and also, like, you know, the background story. My dad was not doing well, and he was constantly like sick, and my mom was taking care of him, and I felt like I was so restricted to stay in Switzerland. I had to move, so I had to start anew over there, you know. It was almost like I had to leave, you know, and it was heartbreaking too, because like you know, I wish I could have helped out, but at the same time I would have gone under. I know that, you know. It has been a bittersweet thing, you know,
right,
to leave and to leave everyone behind. It was a really bittersweet thing.
Yeah, and how does that affect you now, looking back? Yeah,
that's a good question, because you know, coming from a different country, it's really hard to establish yourself here. I think mastering the language, and I think I'm doing pretty good at that. You know, it's like I've been here since '98, and I think you know, I mastered it pretty well. And you know, you will know when I have like a drink or two in me that I'm definitely not from here, you know.
Uh-huh. How many languages do you speak, by the way?
Well, I would say 4, but it's kind of well, it's not really like completely different languages. I speak German. I mean, you know, do I really speak it fluently at this point? Probably not. It probably takes me a couple of days to get back into it. But if I go over there, which I haven't been able to, but if I would be in Germany, like I could get around easily.
What was your birth language?
I would be Swiss German, which is just a dialect of German. It's just it's almost like, to me it almost sounded a little bit like Dutch or something. It was like it doesn't really sound like German. There's a lot of in there, so it could be almost like, you know, like the not Yiddish, but like,
yeah,
you know,
I was going to say
the Israelis have a lot of you know, like, so we have that in common. But it's kind of those two, and I just had French for 4 years in school, so I understand a bunch of French, but I can't really speak it per se. You know, that would take me even longer, and then English would be my fourth. You know,
right?
Yeah.
Well, it would be hard to know that it was your fourth. You're very fluent.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like, I always made it a habit to be around Americans all the time. Like, I try to not hang with someone that was German, I really wanted to learn it. I really wanted to get proficient at it, because like for me, communication is a really big deal of my life. Like I want to be able to communicate exactly what I feel. And it was very limiting when I was coming here first. I felt like it was like, felt like a baby, like taking baby steps. And that was really hard for me. It was really challenging because I always like to have deep conversations in my old, country. And I wanted to keep that up, and I wanted to have like really, meaningful conversations. And so I needed to just read up a lot, and reading was definitely helped a lot. Like reading a lot of English books about many different topics and fiction as well. But it was a lot of deep literature for sure.
So what are some of the things you read?
Oh, tons of stuff. I mean, one of my favorite books is probably Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and I think I read it in German and in English, which is kind of fun. Hermann Hesse is one of my favorites for sure. Then like the Bhagavad Gita is like one of my favorite books. Then like I had some books about magic that I was really into. Tons of stuff. I mean, like I was into, I had the X-Files. I read the X-Files. I love, what is his name now? Stephen King.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff, especially the Dark Tower series.
Okay.
That was probably one of my favorites. I got turned on to that, and that turned out to be a really, really good one.
Cool.
And then like things like Camus, or like what was it, Kafka was really interesting.
Oh wow,
I love that kind of stuff. It's just deeper kind of thought-provoking kind of.
Do you ever feel like your journeys into reading affect your art?
Yeah, too. I think everything kind of influences it. Yeah, it has to at some point. It will. Yeah. Everything you absorb will reflect also in your art. I'm sure it will come through in some way, or I think it's just your interpretation of it that will then transcend onto the canvas or whatever, or like onto your instrument or whatever it is. Well,
that's what I like about mixed media artists is that I'm noticing a theme that a lot of artists will cross over into other formats.
Yes, and
even experiment with them. Is sort of a reprieve from something you've studied a lot. Yeah. So.
It's like a balancing thing for me. It's like, the art that I do when I draw, I think I'm pretty proficient at it, but it's almost too heady at times. So I need something like the drums. I'm not a professional drummer by any means, but it's kind of like that kind of just balances everything out, where I can just like let go and not be too critical. Although I'm way less critical with anything I do. I let it flow a lot more. And
than you used to, perhaps.
Yeah. Oh, completely. Yeah. I mean, I was way more heady back in the days. Oh, completely. Yeah.
And it's a hard habit to unlearn.
Yeah, it's hard not to go in the head at all. Yeah. And you need the head. I mean, because I was in my heart a lot for a while and not in my head at all, right? So it taught me some things too, where I just fell in love, and just got my heart broken like crazy. But it taught me a lot of things, It taught me to love unconditionally. That's something that came up, and I have to say I'm thankful for that, because I was very judgmental about certain things, and I have to say, like, I accept everyone for who they are now, and it doesn't matter what religion, what gender, like even like the gender fluidity. For a while it was like, what the hell, and now I'm just like, yeah, why not, like if that's really what sets you free, then go for it. Who am I to judge, Like if someone judges me, like, I have tattoos, for instance, right? They can judge me all over, It's like, it's a form of expression.
Well, it's interesting too, because, I've talked a little bit about the soul, and there's this concept in reincarnation. Some lifetimes you may be male, and other lifetimes you may be female.
Completely. Yeah.
And so, not that everybody believes that, not that
Yeah.
I even know what I believe, but if that's
Who knows
true,
what's really true anyway, right?
if that's true, I mean, think about it. If you were a male in another life and you're female in this life, and you're like, well, wait a second, like I liked being, I mean, like
Yeah.
who knows how it all works? Like who knows how you get the number, the assignment? You're like, oh shit, I was supposed to be a girl, and then all of a sudden, But I also like the idea of, in Jung, they talk about the soul having the divine masculine and the feminine aspects.
Good that you bring that up, because that's very important, because like we all have both aspects within us. And I had actually my feminine quite awakened, funny enough, as a man. And I had to almost learn how to strengthen my masculine, get more into that, like as in the doer, get things done, because I was, as an artist, you're very right brain, and it's more that kind of thing, that dynamic. And so, yeah, it was good to kind of get that more balanced in a way. Yeah.
I remember people always used to say like, oh, you must be gay. And it was actually quite painful for me, because in my belief system at the time that wasn't okay. Because I was raised conservative Christian, and that's like, oh no, like,
right.
So I really had to ask myself, is that true? And then I realized, okay, like, dude, it's so obvious I like dicks.
Right.
But you know what I mean? Like, there would be nothing wrong with that either.
No,
and just sort
not.
of like being in that space of like, going, okay, am I really okay with that idea? And then doing a lot of deep work and realizing that what I was judging as not male was literally just my true self of having feminine aspects that aren't necessarily feminine or masculine. Our society has put this kind of label on it.
Yeah, and as a guy, you have to be the tough guy, and you have to be just like showing no emotions and all that crap, and like, what's the point? What's the point in that? I mean, I thought of it as a weakness back in the days. I remember my dad was very emotional all the time, and I always thought that it would be a weakness. But now, it's like, I mean, it's good to be emotional, but it's also good to not stay there all the time. It's like, it's good to feel it. I think it's definitely valid to feel the emotion, to sit with it, but not always necessarily act from it or react from it, better so. And that's also a thing I had to learn is to not react from that space, because then it's very detrimental. And I did that before. And
when I feel like the concept of balance of those opposite sides and bringing those two aspects within yourself together in harmony, making them flow, and making them fluid, and not being so rigid about, somebody disrespected me, I have to, beat them up. It's like there's all these,
unless they deserve it, right?
Like there's this idea of like yin and yang and male and female sort of balancing each other out and sort of softening. You need the hammer for certain things, but for the man who has a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, and so so I think that there's a sort of wisdom in finding all aspects of yourself, and even sometimes developing, if you're a right brain artist, every once in a while giving yourself a foray into something more logical and linear and time bound, and just sort of learning those aspects, but not driving yourself crazy with them.
But also, like, what I also notice is in my past, I was actually better about the left brain than I am now. I mean, I was pretty together, and I did my taxes myself, and I can't stand that stuff anymore now. It's almost like I rebelled from all that, and I had to get away from, like, Switzerland is very bureaucratic,
Right.
It's almost more than here, or it's about the same. I don't know. It's just like, it's everywhere, it seems now.
It's the same, it's just Europe, so it's socialist instead of capitalist.
Oh man.
Different bags, same problems.
but it's always like, no system is good, really. I mean, like,
Right.
I'm still a believer that small communities, self-sufficient communities would be like the thing for the future, like that.
Me too.
I would love to see that more, rather than like a big overhead where everything just gets lost. You don't know where the money goes. You just don't. It's like, I just see everyone, paying their ass off, so to say, and not really getting anything in return, and that's something that bothers me. It just I'm always been very critical about that, like socially critical about what's going on in the world. I'm not as into that anymore. I was heavily into like, conspiracies and all that, I have to say. And
that is a deep dark hole.
Yeah, I let go of that. I definitely let go of that a lot, and because I saw also the detrimental effects of that.
Right.
That I was then, I was getting too paranoid about chemtrails and all that, and like then I also like ask myself the question: maybe it's nothing, that they spray, but it's more like they make it seem like that, and you like consciously will then like say, oh wow, they spray something bad, and so it affects you because you think of it as something bad.
Sure.
And it might just be nothing at all, right?
Sure.
So,
and the placebo effect is real.
Exactly.
What you believe affects your body.
Yes. And so when you really go down that rabbit hole, it's so fearful. There's so much fear in that movement, and I appreciate the people still like, and I gained a lot of knowledge, but I also think it's somewhat of like a one-way street that it's hard to get out of. It's like it's that dead end street, dead end street more than one-way street. It's a dead end street, and you become very limited. And I have to say, I was really happy to find some people within the movement that combined it with somewhat like a spiritual approach, where they actually were looking for solutions rather than the ones that just pointing fingers at everything and just like, oh, this is bad and that is bad, and like, and they controlling you and these guys and whatever. Like, I mean, you really allow it, right?
Yeah.
First of all,
in an existential way.
Exactly. So it's also what you feed into, and what you feed becomes stronger, right? So
I know what's funny is I remember being a kid, and I used to say to my grandmother, well, they're doing this and the government's doing that, and like they want this and they want that. And back when I was surrounded by closed-minded people, there was a lot of they going around, and she finally said to me, who's they?
Right.
And I couldn't answer the question.
Yeah, because, like what really got me thinking was, why are all these guys that put that stuff out there, why they're still around and not taken out, especially if they have like a huge platform, right? Like the ones that preach in like stadiums about, all the evils in the world. And
I don't know. I think they're in on it.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
They're
That's exactly.
They're like, let's get everybody fearful, and let's get all the people who are like possibly mobilized for any force of good, and let's turn them really negative and fearful, and then we'll discredit them.
And so that really got me thinking, like, and I don't want to mention any names because
I think that's
do that,
smart.
I don't want to be involved in anything like that. But like, in certain things, like I went quite off the deep end with certain like ideologies and all that. I don't have to like go into this, but it's just like, I like to just entertain everything. I like to look into everything. I'm curious by nature, and it just it takes me to some interesting places at times, and that's all good,
Well, I almost think as an artist you have to explore a lot of things, even if they're just a little rabbit trail on your way to something else, because it's in the taking the long way home that you see the sunset that inspires you to have.
And I always have a long way home now.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm driving constantly.
Yeah. Well, at least now you're not looking at tail ends of other cars.
True. And it's less concrete on my drive home now. It's actually quite. It's a beautiful drive. I actually don't mind it as much. It's
and that's
nice.
A lot of artists move to the country. I think of Walden Pond.
It was needed. I was really, and you saw me going through that too. Like I was like, the city was just driving me crazy. It's just like and living on top of each other and all that. Like I still have neighbors and all that, and there's still gonna be things like that are not perfect, of course. But just,
I think you'd like to live in more seclusion if you could.
In a way, yeah. I still crave someone to do that with. Like
you want to pick
at some
who
point.
you get to be next to.
Yeah. I would love to have a say in that for sure. Yeah, for sure. And I'm open to that again, and it's cool,
but I think
it's exciting.
Part of that for you, having sat down and talked with you a lot, is that you seem to get influence, like you said, everything around you you're taking in. So it's almost like staring at concrete, dealing with traffic, dealing with angry people, just the lack of beauty around you in your old environment was not the right fuel.
Yeah, but it was at the same time, I have to say, it was the right fuel for some pieces.
True.
That I drew. So it also the discord of that can also sometimes be a good catalyst for certain things. So it was also, I needed that experience to create certain pieces.
This would be a good time to talk about metal.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, let's talk about your favorite band.
Yeah, The Contortionist.
Yes.
Yeah.
He turned me on to this album, and he's like, Steve, he just kept talking about it. Steve, this album, and he's like, total fanboy. And I met them, they're awesome, and, just keeps going on, and I'm like, okay, cool, and then he invited me to a show.
Oh, yeah, I remember, yeah. That was a cool time.
That was a great show.
And we had some grub afterwards.
It was my first time to, what was that club that they played at?
Oh, I forgot. Was it the El Rey or something?
The El Rey.
Was
it
the
El Rey?
First
time. It was awesome. Yeah. And, the CD, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a music producer. I'm a fan of concept albums.
Yes.
Something you could play from start to finish, either in your car, in your headphones, in your bedroom.
I'm a sucker for that.
And this record, but the thing about it is I've worked on metal. I'm not necessarily a metal head. I don't listen to metal for fun. Yeah. But this album, every once in a while, I put it on just to get blissed out.
Yeah.
And if metal could bliss you out, this one does.
And it has such we're talking about the album language here.
Yes, thank you.
In particular. That album, I worked through a lot with that album, like all the deaths I went through. I mean, just to bring that up real quick, my mom died, and my dad died 4 months after, and my uncle, and my aunt, and my ex-wife's dad died the same year. It was just one after another. And so it's kind of all that and going through, we had already a rough time. And so the music really helped. And it was such a positive album. There was a lot of spirituality in it, which I really loved. There was a lot of stuff in there that was really just amazing. And it was really interesting how it came about, supposed to be the album. The new singer was just joining. Michael Lessard, and I love those guys. I usually hang with them all the time. I go to their shows and they know me.
Yeah, they were really cool.
Yeah,
we got to go backstage. It was super
cool stuff. And so it was that album really helped me work through things. And there's some really aggressive parts on there as well, but it was never to the point where it was just there was always some meaning to it.
Aggressive and progressive at the same time. So in other words, odd time signatures, weird seventh jazz chords, over chugging guitars.
Yeah.
Incredible stuff. The way they put it all together from a musical, artistic, mathematical perspective.
Yes, everything. And it was hard in it too. See, that's what I loved about it. It was, I when I listen to music too, it's an energy that I get. It's not that I like every band of that genre. They were just sticking out because there was something that transcended from the player through the instrument to the amp through to the voice into the microphone, that I hear their essence or I feel their essence. It's like artists like Fink, that's a great artist, or someone I just discovered as of late, Leilani, what was it, Wolfgram? Oh my God, holy crap. When she sings, you feel that. She's more like a reggae-ish kind of style. Amazing. It's just it's people like that inspire me because they bear their soul with their instrument or with their voice or whatever they do, and I try to do the same with my art, So it's it's almost like bearing your soul, and it was a little intimidating at first too because my art is very different from what I wanted to do. I wanted to,
that's important.
Really interesting. Interesting point. Because I wanted to be the cool artist that draws skulls because I'm the guy, and then I end up drawing things with flowers and bees, what the hell, and so it's
they're badass bees.
And so I had some conflicts, some inner conflicts about that, but you know what, I knew that it was important art, and I was expressing something, and it didn't matter who I was there. I really expressed my true being, and so that's really it. That's key, and it doesn't matter what it is. It could be metal, it could be blues, it could, like, for instance, a Keb Mo, holy crap, it's so good, so good. There's artists that are just like, wow, I want to bow, it's like, it's that kind of thing. Although, funny enough, most of those artists are so like down to earth and don't think of themselves as that.
Maybe
they're
that's
just
what
like,
you're drawn to.
Yeah, it's just naturally coming out of them. They don't have to be something. They just are. They're channeling it. They're just not in the way, basically.
Now, do you listen to music when you paint?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Different things, and there's sometimes I also need silence when I paint. It's like it's whatever feels right at the moment. And for some pieces, I listen to some really heavy shit, so to say, and for some, like it was almost like meditative music or whatever. Like it really, whatever feels right. For the specific piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can't draw, like, let's say I couldn't draw like the bee and flower one with like heavy metal on my head. Yeah, exactly. Oh, that yeah, exactly. That's funny. Yeah, you just can't do that. It's just like, I mean, you could, but it's like it would probably
be an angry bee.
Yeah, it would be an angry bee, and I think, like, for the people that would observe that piece of art, they would probably get a mixed message, because I think that energy would still translate into the art.
Man, I still got to get my heart rate down after doing that little
right? There you go.
second note drum fill.
Nice. But I think it's very important to not judge yourself as you do art. That was a big one to learn from me. That was huge. Not to be in the way of your natural expression. Like the same thing, like, if you feel like you're different, like let's say you're gay or you wanna change your gender, then maybe you should. I don't know. I don't have that desire myself, but I'm just saying, I'm just trying to be truthful to myself. That's really my number one goal, is like to not bullshit myself, to kind of like be completely true and honest and raw,
I'm reminded, and I won't call you out too much because, we've talked a lot, but, I'm reminded of when you were talking about dating again after your divorce, and you were like, hey, Steve, I'm kind of getting okay with the idea of just dating a girl with tattoos, because I like that.
Yeah.
Who cares what anyone else thinks?
Exactly.
I'm kind of thinking like, oh my God, that's a hang up for you. Like, it didn't even occur to me that could be a hang up.
It's funny enough that, like that, I always liked that. But I always judged it. I was always afraid of it. I was always afraid to actually approach girls that had tattoos. Funny enough. Even now, I have tattoos, right? But like, it's intimidating to me. It's funny. It's really funny.
Yeah, and I feel like that's your vibe. Like,
I
feel like you find the most like-minded women that are tatted up. Like,
I find it very beautiful on a woman. I find it even more. I think it's more attractive on a woman than a man, to me. It really is. I mean, depending, of course, what kind of tattoos. I mean, you could have some of the crappy ones.
You like when you like when somebody has a sense of aesthetic, and you like when somebody makes themselves a work of art. I mean, share that with me.
And also, like, if someone expresses themselves through that, it's not like, I'm not into obviously generic tattoos. Like, everything I have on my body is I designed, right? So I appreciate
and
also that. Thank you. I appreciate that. And so it's kind of like, and I met someone, and about that too, with going through this whole journey. Like, she had a big tattoo on her chest, right? And she designed that herself too, and I really appreciated that. I thought that was really cool, and I appreciate anyone that has at least an idea and can maybe translate that to a tattoo artist, and they can maybe turn that into whatever they want if they don't have the skill to draw it themselves.
I'd be remiss if I did not ask you, on behalf of the listeners who can't see you, about some of your tattoos.
Okay.
And what they look like.
Sure.
And what they say.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one here right where my hand is. It says self-love and honesty, and it's kind of like the self. The S is like a treble clef. So, since I have stuff to do with music, and then I have one up here that's very personal, which I actually don't
on the inside of
my arm. which kind of signifies the journey I was going through. And I don't want to necessarily go into like, that's very personal, that's a very it's almost like a sacred thing to me, at this point. And I don't want to give that away what that is. Like I'll let you imagination run free.
You had a very, very intense and brief relationship that really changed your...
It really, really, really challenged me a lot. But you know what, like I learned a lot from it, and it was probably the most beautiful half a year that I experienced almost in my life, and it was the most horrendous, hellish time afterwards. So it was like there was a stark contrast, and it was also because like I felt completely accepted, like on every level. And it was such a bliss, to be accepted, because like before I didn't feel like I was accepted all the way. And that was rough.
In your prior relationships.
Yeah, especially in my marriage too. I mean, like I never felt like I was really truly accepted all the way to my true being. But I was also holding back my true being a little bit. I was being a little bit too... I say like just playing along and not really going for what I really wanted to do, So it was not really her fault or anything like that, and she was actually quite good to me overall. Like I appreciated that time too, and it taught me a lot,
It's cliche, love songs and breakup songs.
Yeah,
the most prolific songs in the market. Like they're all over.
Tell me about it.
But the paradigm surrounding relationships is pretty dated. I feel like there's a lot of mutual usury going on in the idealized relationship. Like, oh, he's going to rescue me as a knight in shining armor. Oh, she's going to just do everything I need. Like,
That was really, looking back, that was really my problem. I was still running on the old paradigm, so to say, when I met that person. And I put a lot of pressure on her. And I realized that now. I still was looking for someone to save me, deep down. I was still not taking self-responsibility, and it's still hard at times. I still feel like I could use some help, because it's been a rough journey, and it's been like, I'm 48 years old now, and
48 years young.
Yeah, or 48 years young, like I supposedly don't look it, so I guess I keep myself.
You look 35.
Yeah, there you go. So whoever wants to, just kidding.
His phone number is.
His phone number available. Is exactly. I'm available. I'm just kidding. But it's kind of, I'm coming to terms with a lot of things, why things played out the way they played out, and it needed to blow up and needed to go there, and I needed to have those really dark moments and deep moments and purge, and it also helped me to go and deal with all the deaths I had, all the trauma that was even prior to meeting her, and so she was also a catalyst for that in a way, and I'm sure I was a catalyst for her too.
Yeah, well, everybody can relate to an intense relationship, and
I think you bring something to the table as well, it's
right. So it takes two to tango,
exactly,
and everybody's got their own baggage to work through and clear through, and karma to clear, and
exactly. I think she made a lot of changes afterwards. I could see that where she stepped up for herself, and I thought that was really awesome. I think that's what love is about too, is just letting someone actually go. It was just really, really powerful, and it just I came back, as in like I didn't die from it, so that's good.
Yeah.
So I'm here.
Well,
right?
And that's the thing is like it's the Romeo and Juliet thing. It's like relationships can be fatal, and it's just because I think anything that you put so much weight on and so much stock in, like this has to work out, and it's like the end of the world if it doesn't. And I feel like relationships fall into that trap, but also art can fall into that trap too.
Everything can probably
because when you're putting your heart and soul into your expression, and then you want to put it out there for the world to praise, and that's not what happens.
Yeah, you put a lot of pressure on yourself for that.
And then all of a sudden, like, what was this? Oh, I'm opening up becomes this sort of crashing down.
Yeah, and there was also definitely something to that as well. I experienced that. But at the same time, still, even if this doesn't go like to places where I imagine it to go, I still think I was at least authentic in my creation, So
I think you have to like your art.
Exactly.
You're not making it for someone else.
No, never make it for someone else. That's the worst thing, because then you just like, you're not in the flow if you do it for someone else. It's the same as in a relationship. It's the same thing. If you live for someone else, you just like, you're in this cage, you know. You have to, I mean, there's a compromise, of course, you know, if you work with someone, or like if it's an art project we do with someone else, right? You have to kind of meet each other halfway. You have to be open to the other side as well. And I think that's with everything. It's like with a relationship, you know, it's just, if you get to that point where you can literally be yourself and take the other person the way they are and completely accept them, I mean, that's gold. You know, that's really what I want in a relationship, in any kind of business partnership. You know, I that's what I want to find. And it might sound utopian, you know. I mean, it might be like an utopian thought, but I think it's actually possible to a certain extent.
I heard another artist that I admire, listen to on another podcast, say something very profound, which was that you might have a valid perspective, and I have my perspective, and we're both right.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's up to the artist to embody their perspective and embody it fully and be completely in that, so that the other person has that vision to interact with and to see the other side.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded one of your cards is called Two Sides of the Story.
Yeah.
And there's like these...
That kind of represents that relationship I had, for sure.
Yeah. And, you know, that's true
yin
with
and yang
any...
in a way.
Yeah, that's true with anything. And I think, you know, the way that you've taught me to sort of like wear my heart on my sleeve and show my true colors. Honestly, I have to give you some credit, because
I saw you come out of your shell
I
like
wouldn't
crazy.
be doing this podcast, I don't think, if it was for certain of the things that you said to me of like, Steve, be yourself, you know, like there's nothing, like I think you're cool, like I like your opinions, I like, and you know, there was a big part of me that was afraid of how people would receive the things that I had to say, the things that I wanted to bring out of my guests, and how out there or weird or different they were. And really, I feel very like I've transformed.
I've seen
just
you
in the time that I've known you. And so I have to give you credit for that. And I definitely think that this was one of the best interviews so far.
Thank you.
On the podcast. So
I
Mathias
appreciate
Manser,
that.
It's
was
great
awesome.
to have you on the Language of Creativity podcast.
Yeah.
Where can people find your art if they want to buy it, interact with it, see it?
All right. So at this point, I'm still having a website in the works, which is going to be MathiasManser.com, which is MathiasManser.com. I actually spelled it out.
By the time this is out, it'll be...
hopefully. And if not, like, even if it wouldn't be, you can find the deck that I have. It's called the Primordial Sound Oracle Deck. You just Google that and it will pop up.
On Etsy.
It's on Etsy, but you just Google that and it will pop up. The Primordial Sound Oracle Deck.
And then you can see like samples of your artwork, which is amazing. And also spell your name.
So my first name is Mathias, and the last name is Manser, Manser.com. Yeah,
okay.
That'll be it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Mathias, thanks for being here. This was
thank you,
a pleasure.
Steve.
We'll have to have you back when you're
I
a
would love to be
multimillionaire
back.
and, you know, you're
Sounds good. I had fun.
I had a blast. I always have fun talking to you.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, that's the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Before you go, check out Mathias's art on Redbubble. It's linked in the show notes, and you can see many of Mathias's artworks put on t-shirts and wall hangings and other paraphernalia that would be a great addition to your personal collection for not very much money. So if you want to support the artists you hear on the show, please check out the show notes and consider becoming a patron of the arts with your purchase. Thanks for listening. I'm Stephen Levitt, and this is the Language of Creativity podcast.